now. Okay, Al, Hernandez, I am glad to be joining you this morning. This is Andy Davis from the Clatsop County Democrats. I want to thank you for joining us and thank you for running for the Sunset Empire Parks and Recreation Transit Board. I have a few questions for you. I'll start with, can you just tell us a bit about yourself and what kind of experiences and expertise you bring to the table for this position?
Yes, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Basically, I'm a graduate of UC Davis with a degree in economics. Additionally, I took classes to complete my accounting background at Cal State University, Northridge in Southern California. I went to work with a local CPA firm in Southern California that later merged with Arthur Young. I got my CPA certificate, which is a certified public accountant in California. Worked in public industry. I then left public to start working within the private industry. I worked with a company named WIA International, which is Warner Electro and Atlantic. I got to the position of assistant controller. It's a record company that distributes records throughout the world. I also revised the royalty statements while I was there and made system improvements. I later moved on to a company called Universal Records, which is part of the Universal family, in charge of the Latin division. I was vice president of finance for the U.S. Latin division in the United States, and the vice president of Latin copyrights for all of Latin America, which included preparing budgets, doing financial reporting, doing the audits, both internal and external audits, board presentations. I did a lot of contracts in Spanish and in English, since our main clientele was in the Spanish-speaking world. I did that for about 25 years experience with private industry, where I was basically responsible for the accounting and the money of these major corporations. I later worked with a company called Warner Chappell, which is arguably the second or third largest publisher in the world, where we contributed EBITDA of about $92 to $95 million annually to the parent company. Again, I was responsible for the payments, preparing the budgets, doing the monthly reporting, and making sure that management was informed of all major decisions and had the information to make the proper decisions along the way. I later left the private industry working and decided to go to the public sector, where I was the financial director of a number of cities in California, where I went on to be the city administrator of a city in Southern California also. And I was also the executive director of the development agency of that city. And that city included Parks and Rec, included a pool where we were losing $900,000 per year on the pool. And to work on it and devising new programs and new revenue streams, we got the losses to less than $200,000 per year. And all that without increasing any cost to the public or cutting services. We maintained the services and actually improved the services and expanded on them. We brought new programs into the pool area. But we also brought in recreational exercise equipment to a number of our parks, so that the seniors and the public could enjoy the exercise equipment at their convenience at the parks with no cost to the public. Again, we did that through joint ventures and through partnerships with local industry in the area. I dealt with also the negotiations with the SEIU and the POA during contract negotiations. This was the era where the state of California and a lot of cities were losing money and declaring bankruptcy. And I was able to keep our city, our community out of bankruptcy and keep them afloat long enough for the crises in California to go over. I then basically left California with the idea of retiring, came up here to Oregon, where I worked with Sunset Empire Transportation District as their financial officer. I worked on the completion of a systems transition from an old system to a new system that had been left in limbo. I completed it and finished it. I brought up the audits up to current standards. I revised the entire financial package for the board and for the public, so that it would be easier to understand and it would highlight any differences or any changes that were taking place. In other words, I wanted the systems and the company to be transparent to the public. And I worked in the public industry for about 7 years. Again, keeping in mind that transparency was a major factor for us to keep the public informed and do whatever it takes to keep the public informed, and not just abide by the law says it's 45 days, and therefore we only leave it open for 45 days. But we stressed informing the public, making the transparency, and keeping it open until they were satisfied and knew what was happening with the system. So that brings me to today, basically, where I'm basically retired and looking at Sunset Empire Parks and Rec to see what's going on there, because I'm in this community and I'm interested in making sure the community and the public knows what's happening within their district and where their tax dollars are being spent. Thank you.
So actually, can I ask you maybe to go into that a little bit more about why are you running for this position in particular, and what kind of things do you want to accomplish on the district board?
Thank you. Yes, I'm running for board director for really, it's a couple of basic items. One, transparency. I believe in transparency, that the board and staff needs to make what they're doing, why they're doing it, and how they're doing it transparent to the public. Make sure they're informed, make sure they know what is happening. The good example of that would be the Broadway Middle School purchase that just took place a couple of months ago. I first came acquainted with this potential purchase when my wife brought home a pamphlet or a flyer that was talking about it. It raised questions in my mind, since I do have a financial background and I'm used to analyzing and looking at the pros and cons of any potential acquisition or purchase. And it left me with a lot of questions. I raised some of the questions to staff. I raised the questions to the board. And the basic question was this: how is the district going to repay the loan for the purchase and the repairs and maintenance that may need to be incurred going forward with this project? I never received an answer. I asked a question, numerous other members of the public asked similar questions. Had they done enough due diligence for the purchase? And yet there was no answers. There was no responses. It left me really thinking, why are they not talking about it? Why are we moving so quickly to try and make this purchase happen? So it just left a lot of questions on my mind. And I kept thinking, if I have these questions, I'm sure other people in the public have the same questions. And these are questions that need to be flushed out. They need to be communicated to the public one way or another, whether they be good or bad. It doesn't matter. They need to be discussed. And it's the board's responsibility to ensure that there's enough outreach, enough communications with the public to keep them informed. So that was one item that just really bothered me. A second item that bothered me, because I was trying to find information on the purchase. Can we afford it or can we not afford it? I looked at their financials a little bit closer, not really close, but a little bit closer. And what I noticed was the financials were by and large incomplete, or missing sections, missing a balance sheet, missing the capital section. So I thought, how could you review a financial without the full package? It just didn't sound right to me. So I looked at it a little bit harder, and I noticed there was one item in particular that really jumped out at me. It was a loan of $215,000 that had been there for probably 15 months now, or 14 months. Hadn't changed, hadn't moved. Doing just a little bit more research, I found that that loan had been paid off around December of 2019 or early January 2020. And yet here we are in December of 2020 or January of 2021, and the loan was still showing as outstanding. So I thought, how could the board be approving financials and making decisions about what the district is going to do when the information they're getting is inaccurate or incomplete at best? And yet they're still approving all these financials and recording them in the system and making the public feel that the numbers are correct. Again, I thought, why is this happening? And a little bit further research told me that, well, it looks like none of the board members have a financial background. So how could they really look at something from a financial point of view and make sense out of it when they really don't know what they're looking at? So how could they even ask the questions? But yet they're making multi-million-dollar decisions based on financials that they're getting and information that is being given to them by their staff. Again, it raises the question, why is this happening? This needs to be changed. It needs to be altered. I brought this subject up to them a number of times, that their financials were incorrect, and please explain to me why this loan is still outstanding. Why is their retained earnings or their capital section moving all the time? Why hasn't the purchase been recorded? I never got an answer. I got an answer, but it wasn't a satisfactory answer. It was really no answer at all. And yet they approved the financials without any further questions. And the financials that they did approve, which was January of 2021, they approved without a capital section. Again, how do you approve a financial that's incomplete? You don't know what's going on with them. What are they hiding?
Al, can I ask you, so I think you're bringing up some interesting topics here, and maybe I'd like you to segue into the third question we have, which is really
Sure.
about in the past term, what could they have done better, and what or how would you change that?
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. The main thing that I would change would be two things. One, transparency. Again, getting back to this Broadway Middle School purchase, I think the board needed to have taken it upon themselves to spend more time, do the due diligence, get information, find out what the actual cost is going to be in the long run. Because what we're talking about is a purchase of about $2.2 million for the actual property, and possible repairs and maintenance and remediation that would get up into maybe $10 million additional going forward. Was there enough due diligence? I don't think there was. Was the public informed about the due diligence? Again, I don't think it was. I never saw a document about it. And they need to make this information transparent and open to the public for them to review. It wasn't presented, it wasn't shown. Maybe they don't want the public to know about it. And that's my biggest gripe. If I was a board member, I would make sure that we showed the public what we're doing, what the potential cost would be, and how we plan to solve these problems. The Broadway Middle School has now been purchased, which is fine. Okay, it's been purchased. So let's look at it. What is it going to cost to go forward with it? And is it something that this district can afford? Can we afford the repairs and maintenance? Can we afford the mitigation of mold, the roof repair, the lead paint, the asbestos, the seismic retrofit that may be done on the school? How much is it going to cost us? Can we afford it? And if it meant postponing the purchase, then they should have done that. I would have postponed it. I would have dragged it on as long as possible, or there need be, to make sure the public got their information and knew what was being done and what it was going to cost them. After all, at the end, the public, the taxpayer, is the one that's going to pay the burden of whatever the debt might be or whatever the cost would be, even if it means cutting other services because maybe they can't raise the tax rate anymore. But still, the public will pay for it one way or another. The other thing that I would do different, it would be the acceptance of financials that are incomplete or erroneous. Again, how can the public rely on this information or trust what the board is deciding on if they have bad information? They need to sit down and make the financials something that the public can understand. It's easy to read, and without having to spend hours and hours to figure out what happened during the month. They need to be told, not hidden, and not kept in the dark. The other example I could give you is the annual audited financial statements were presented and accepted by the board. And yet the only thing that was presented was your opinion page. There was not a balance sheet, and there was not an income statement presented to the public. So how could they look at it? How could they review it? You can't. Again, why is that? What's being hidden? And yet the board approved the financials and accepted them as complete. That gives me a lot of heartache. And I think what we really need to do is get a board that is transparent, that's willing to talk to the public and listen to the public and react to what their needs are. This is what I would strive to improve, even if it means having town hall meetings, having more outreach, and getting together with the public one way or another and informing them as to what you're doing and why you're doing it. Those are the major things that I see that this board can do different. And I think what we need to do is have somebody that's diverse, that has a different background, has financial experience, and can take the best of the private world, which I have 25 years of experience, and the public world, which I have over 7 years experience, combine the two to come up with something better so that the public is informed. Information flow is the best thing that could happen to the public. And let them know what you're doing, why you're doing it, and let them decide to go forward or not to go forward and listen to their problems. Thank you.
Okay. Al, do you have anything that we've missed in the questions that we've asked that you want to add at this time?
Yeah, the only other comment I would make is I think for a board, you don't need to have, or you shouldn't have a board that's homogeneous, that everybody has the same background and similar likes and dislikes. There's nothing wrong with having a board with different people with different opinions and different thoughts. You come up with a better decision. You come up with a better outcome for the public in general. And I think with my background, with my public and private experience, I think I would add that diversity to this board or any board and coming out with better conclusions for the public. After all, we work for the public, not the other way around. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I want to say again, we so much appreciate you joining us today and answering our questions and going over what you want as a candidate. We also very much appreciate you running for public office and being willing to help the public out in that way. So thank you. I hope that you have a good election cycle. Good luck to you, sir.
Thank you very much. I appreciate this opportunity.